Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Roger here. Welcome back to BeamNG. Today I am going to give an update to the force feedback situation that has been ever developing here in the BeamNG world. Not really that dramatic, but there has been some updates, actually two back-to-back updates related to force feedback, and I feel as though it's necessary for me to kind of go over this again since things have changed since we last tried it out. And things have indeed changed for the better. We're going to do so while looking at some of the other Viper entries we got from the contest that we didn't cover in the rundown series of the top 10 concept cars. Those were top 10 realistic next-gen Vipers, but I had another category that I was going through and looking for next-gen, or actually not next-gen, but future concept car design. So these would be cars that would go to the showroom floor to inspire people, but not necessarily something that was intended for production. And this was Mr. Chip's entry, and it was one of my absolute favorites. I loved the Viper, styling. It reads very Viper and yet does it in an exotic car format. It is also extremely wild. This thing has a 9-liter V10. It's completely crazy. So I figured it would be a good candidate to first check out some of this force feedback stuff. Before I move my keyboard away, I'm going to give you a look at where my settings lie now, because it's very different than the last video I did. I told you in that video anything I was saying there was going to be outdated very soon, and this might be as well, but we're looking better. So we're now at 700 strength. I have it down to 230 on the low speed strength. That's kind of a personal preference thing. Strength is now maxed all the way out. Smoothing's at 100 and fast smoothing at 200. This is the area I'm working on the most. I can't seem to get rid of the choppiness in the force feedback at speed, and that's where some of the confusion kind of comes in. But it is feeling much better. They've worked a lot on the return to center feel, as well as the oversteer-understeer response feel. Overall, really big improvements, and not needing that pacifier anymore of a centering spring. It's, manually set and not simulated anyway, to keep the wheel centered and to give you that feel like you know where the center of the rack is. So good news there. And we'll look at this stuff on the track, and I think I can probably show you some of the improvements there. It's really amazing how far the force feedback stuff has come in a relatively short amount of time, because it was only, a year ago that when I would try BeamNG, I couldn't find any sense in it. Like, the force feedback just, it made me believe that there was huge fundamental issues with the tire physics and just the way the car is handled, and I couldn't wrap my head around BeamNG being a driving simulator at all. Well, with really, from what I can tell, mostly just focused on fixing force feedback issues, it's gotten miles better than that. And, I still think if you transition from iRacing or Assetto Corsa into this, there's a pretty steep learning curve still. It just behaves significantly different. There is still things in this that are a little bit less detailed than in those, specifically with the tire model and stuff. But now that we have a force feedback system that's working, as I think a sim racer would appreciate, it's so much more fluid to drive now. The force feedback is still not Assetto Corsa good. Assetto Corsa is one of those games that I will constantly bow down to for force feedback quality. It just reads so very well. I'm still having some major issues with frame hangs. I really am worrying that there's something wrong with my computer, so we'll ignore those. I don't think that has anything to do with the game. I think it has something to do with my rig, or I have no idea, honestly. We're here to talk about force feedback. And one of the things that they have done is apparently, at low frame rates, the force feedback, because it works as a physical calculation, the force feedback was kind of freaking out at low FPS. It still does a little bit, but not nearly as much. So where are the improvements? Right there, did you see the wheel turn to the right and now to the left? I was literally letting go of the wheel. That's the aspect we were missing before. A car in its steering, actually, due to the alignment and due to the way that they're designed, they want to do certain things with the steering. They want to turn out of a turn. Like when I'm turning it in here, and I let go of the wheel, the car wants to go straight again. A lot of that was missing before, and because it has that now, when I turn into the turn and the force feedback loads up, I can then feel for it to loosen up, and it helps me know that the turn, that the turn is ending and I need to get back to the gas. It's just so much more comfortable now to be able to feel where the edges of grip are, mostly due to that. Also, in the moments of understeer and mostly oversteer, the wheel weight is changing much more dramatically. So I understeered into here, and the wheel was getting very heavy on me. Versus I'll try to force this thing into some oversteer. This is a pretty good but interestingly balanced car, so it's a little difficult to make it do things. Okay, but you saw it there. I got very loose, and the force feedback basically cut out. It essentially lets the wheel go completely limp now. And right here is a good example. Oh. Yep. See, it's there. Force feedback gets loose, and then when I try to countersteer, that's when the pressure comes back in, and you have to fight it back to center. That's the feel I was looking for. Those are the things I was looking for. Oh, it's so good now. Those are the things I was looking for before, and was struggling to find. Also a moment just for this car. Very cool design. It's one of the things that I've kind of toyed around with in my mind is if the Viper is to stick around and it is to stay cool and relevant, this might be the direction it would have to go. It might have to leap out of its obtainability. I know it sounds crazy to say that the Viper is obtainable, but primarily it is. It's a car that one could aspire to own versus a McLaren F1 or, a high-end Lamborghini, a high-end Ferrari. Those are the cars that you think of like, boy, I hope I win the lottery someday so I can get one of those. The Viper to me never was that. I mean, it was an expensive car, but it's a I've done well in life, I'm going to get a Viper kind of car. This category pushes it a little bit away from that, but I think we're seeing it happen in front of our eyes with a Corvette. If it doesn't do that, it will fail to stay relevant because society is changing, our expectations in cars are changing, and there just isn't room in the society for ridiculous, unusable, impractical cars that, basically are archaic and aren't as fast and as, ready to rule the world on the track as they could be, just for the sake of tradition. That kind of car, unfortunately, doesn't fit into our society right now. So I think we're seeing with the Corvette going mid-engine, and I do think if we want to see the Viper stick around, we want to see that nameplate stick around, this might be kind of the direction it has to go. I hope like this one it can maintain a V10 and that it can maintain a manual transmission, but time will tell if that actually happens. For the sake of comparison, I've loaded up one of the BeamNG cars. This is the 200VX street-tuned version, one of my favorites, unsurprisingly, since it's very 240-like. But interestingly, I've previously never really liked the stock BeamNG versions. I always have to go in and make changes to it in order to get it to be tame enough for me to drive. It's always just felt so unwieldy whenever it would get to the oversteer point, and to me it was always an issue of tire model. However, nothing really has changed there that I know of. Really, only the force feedback has changed, and now I'm able to catch this thing when it has moments of oversteer, and I'm really able to read its understeer well as well. This is not a drift car. This is not a car set up to be drifting at all, but the fact that it is doing it pretty well now, and a very poor drifter is able to kind of hang on to these, it's encouraging. See, a lot of these wheel movements that you're seeing, I am not instructing the car to do them. I hate to keep harping on that, but that's really the biggest factor here. And I can't convince you of it. It's something you're going to have to just try for yourself. But when I would get sideways before, I would have to mimic what I knew the front wheels would be doing in a slide like that. Well, now the car is actually responding to those naturally, and it's leading me to do the right things. The wheel instantly... Oh, boo. Boo me. This is why drifting is terrible. You crashed perfectly good 240s. Oh, that's right, I can't reset here because this is hot lapping mode. But yeah, the car is, responding in ways that just feels very natural. So it's all good there. It's not a 10 out of 10 yet, but still, I'm very, very happy and I'm very impressed. I really didn't expect to see this level of improvement so fast, too. See, I could never do that before. Oh, it's so good. I'm so happy. I really am genuinely surprised. I just didn't expect... I knew they were working on it, and I read the changelogs, and I was very happy with what I read, but, I just didn't... Okay, I didn't save that one, but it was close. But I didn't expect it to be as good as it is. So since I'm really feeling pretty good about the driving in BeamNG now, I feel more comfortable moving our competitions, like the Viper build competition, moving on to some driving-based competitions. Now, I've heard the naysayers, and there's people even within my little community that just don't really have a feel for BeamNG yet. Most of the people, that are sim racers in my community have been sim racing for a long time and are very used to very different physics engine than this one is. They just definitely respond in a different way. There's a learning curve, but there's nowhere else where we can do this. The idea of doing build competitions where we also time trial our cars and compete against each other is something that can't be matched anywhere else, and I'm really excited to get to do it. It won't be until I get back from my trip, which will be mid-September, but definitely look forward to another build-off competition come then. Gonna have to do it a little bit differently, so what I'm thinking is, and I'm willing to bounce ideas here in the comments if you're interested, what I'm thinking is there will probably be something like a triathlon. So the car would have 3 different things that it would have to compete in, and you would have to drive the car, and you would have to get a result. There's not really an official way to check results or anything like that, so it's going to be pretty honor system based. But getting your car to that point isn't the grand prize. Basically, what I'm going to do is make it so like a top 10 cars that people post times in, 3 different categories. The average fastest 10 cars would then go off into what you saw in the last, build-off competition, where I would do the judging and reviewing of the cars, because I really do love reviewing the cars, and I really love reviewing them here in BeamNG. So I'm looking forward to doing that. So it would be more to that theme, and if you're kind of wondering what direction we might take, it might be something 240SX related. I did very early on during the Exporter release week, I did do a future 240 build. We might do something like that, kind of like we did with the Viper. I'm also going back in time a little bit. I'm thinking about maybe doing something to do with Vector, which Vector was the car company, the fictional company we always used in the Light campaign, and we'll be continuing that in the future. But it was a real company too. It was a real company that was one of the car companies that got me inspired and into cars and car design. So I would kind of like to toy around with the idea of maybe doing a what if Vector series as well, a what if Vector competition. So what if they had, continued on and kept making cars? What would they do with today's market? That's kind of the idea I would go with there. So those are the two ideas I'm toying with right now. It may be either one of those, it might be both, it might be neither. I don't know yet, but we'll have to see as we move forward. I don't know how people are going to respond to the fact that they have to drive their cars, though. That is one of the things. I do think, in general, there's more people willing to just build their cars than there is to compete with them. But I do think everybody getting together and competing with their cars is going to be a really interesting concept as well. So hopefully we can make it work and try to have the best of both worlds. Kind of just a short update video here for that. I'm very happy with the progress. I mean, the car exporter stuff is moving along quite well too. They're getting that stuff working nicely, and the cars are coming over much more cleanly. The force feedback updates here are very good. Physics-wise, there's definitely still some things that are in the works and need work. I do think the dirt, rally, and overall just off-road physics in BeamNG are probably the next area I would personally put a lot of weight towards. But that's just, my personal preference. Yeah, something definitely fundamentally doesn't feel right about the car's reactions in dirt. It's a very difficult thing. That's not an easy topic to get on, and it could be that these force feedback updates help there too. But fundamentally, something feels a little weird, suspension-wise and tire-wise, especially over there. But with the rate that things are improving, I mean, this could be, I really do think this could be the start of the next generation of BeamNG. I joked about it, and I made videos kind of nearly mocking the perception of BeamNG as a wrecking simulator versus a driving simulator, and I kind of joked about, we're going to, change this into the driving sim of the future. Really, it's starting to shape up to get there. I know people might disagree with me, but this, if you had showed me this game 4 years ago, I'm such a bad drifter, I'm sorry, but it's fun. If you had showed me this game 4 or 5 years ago, and seen the kind of development path that it's taking right now, I probably would have said that this would be a serious contender in the not too distant future. So we'll just have to keep watching it and see how it develops. Can I get away with this video without crashing something? Is that allowed? I think I just heard a very loud no from the audience. Weird. How are you speaking to me from the future? Alright, look, Powers. What you made here, it's very funny. It's very creative. I liked it. But there's only one thing I've really wanted to do to this thing since the moment I laid eyes on it. And we're gonna do it now. How fast will I go, by the way? It's got like 1,000 horsepower. It weighs 6,000 pounds. It feels like it's starting to struggle. 155. Oh, it's actually limited at 155. Well, that's a shame. That's a real shame. Should we take some bets as to how crushed it's gonna get? I think it might only make it to the wheels. Like, it might only make it to the front wheel. Front wheel might end up maybe here. I don't know. There's a lot of no's there. Let's see. Oh. Did pretty good. Did pretty good. Can I drive out of it? Probably. Probably fine, actually. Nothing wrong with this. I think the engine's gone. Alright, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. I'm hoping that more of you give BeamNG a try with your steering wheels, and hopefully these updated settings help you out. I look forward to future automation competitions with the BeamNG Exporter dealio working well now. And by the way, if you stuck around to the end of this video, in the description is a Google Drive where you can download about a dozen of the Viper contest entry cars if you wanted to try them yourself. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.